Good morning, brethren, and welcome to our bi-weekly program entitled A Glance at the Word, which is broadcast live on Facebook every Monday and every Wednesday at 8:30 a.m. West Africa time, which is GMT +1. Today is September the 20th, 2021. And the title of our topic this morning is The Sacrifice of Renouncement as a Key to Elevation. The sacrifice of renouncement as a key to elevation. Let's read the book of Ruth. In fact, we'll stay only in the book of Ruth today, and only one passage. Ruth chapter 1, verses 8 to 17. Ruth chapter 1, verses 8 to 17. And Naomi said to her two daughters-in-law, Go, return each to her mother's house. The Lord deal kindly with you as you have dealt with the dead and with me. The Lord grant that you may find rest each in the house of her husband. So they kissed them. So she kissed them, and they lifted up their voices and wept. And they said to her, Surely we will return with you to your people. But Naomi said, Turn back, my daughters. Why will you go with me? Are there still sons in my womb, that they may be your husbands? Turn back, my daughters, go, for I am too old to have a husband. If I should say, I have hope, if I should have a husband tonight, and should also bear sons, would you wait for them till they were grown? Would you restrain yourselves from having husbands? No, my daughters, for it grieves me very much for your sakes that the hand of the Lord has gone out against me. Then they lifted up their voices and wept again, and Orpah kissed her mother-in-law, but Ruth clung to her. Ruth clung to her. And she said, Look, your sister-in-law has gone back to her people and to her gods. Return after your sister-in-law. But Ruth said, Entreat me not to leave you, or to turn back from following after you. For wherever you go, I will go. And wherever you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God my God. Where you die, I will die, and there will I be buried. The Lord do so to me, and more also, if anything but death parts you and me. You see, the story of Ruth, or the story of Ruth's life, is a very good illustration of the fact that the sacrifice of renouncement is a key to elevation. Let's first put the story of Ruth in its initial setting. There was a great famine in the land of Israel in the days of the judges. A certain man named Elimelech decided to leave Israel, the land of famine, and go to the country of Moab, where there was enough food to eat. He settled there with his wife Naomi and his two sons, Mahlon and Chilion. They spent a total of 10 years in the country of Moab. After some time, I don't know how many years, Elimelech died, and Naomi was left alone with Mahlon and Chilion. Then Mahlon and Chilion married two women from Moab, Orpah and Ruth. But after a while, Mahlon and Chilion also died, and they died childless. I don't know why things happened that way, but that was the story. Thus we now are in front of three widows. One old woman, Naomi, from Israel. Two young women, Orpah and Ruth, the Moabitesses. The Moabitesses. So according to the custom in those days, Orpah and Ruth, being still young, being still in the age of marriage, and being childless, Orpah and Ruth could still marry, but it was Naomi who could marry them to her other unmarried sons, if any. But unfortunately, Naomi didn't have any other child. And moreover, she was too old to marry again. So, thus, Naomi granted her daughters-in-law full freedom to go back to their mother's houses and marry whoever they would accept or whoever they would choose to marry. Orpah eventually accepted this proposition, and she went back to her people with, I think, full hope to have the opportunity to be married and have children. Yet Ruth refused to leave Naomi. Ruth refused to go back to her people. Ruth refused to go back to her family. Ruth refused to go back to her mother's house. So Ruth clearly knew that Naomi had no other child, and Naomi had no wealth. Yet she decided to stay with Naomi and follow her to the land of Israel. In doing this, in deciding to stay with Naomi, Ruth renounced a number of things that we are going to see in detail now. So Ruth renounced a number of interesting things which could help her. The first thing Ruth renounced is marriage, because Naomi had no more child, no more son. So Ruth renounced marriage, which was a great sacrifice for a young woman who could still engage in marriage. By staying with Naomi, instead of going back to her mother's house, as Orpah did, Ruth clearly knew that she chose to renounce marriage. Naomi had no other son who could marry her, and she normally had no chance to find a husband in Israel, because she knew that normally the Israelites just married among themselves. They didn't marry foreigners, and she was a foreigner. She was from another people, so she could not find any husband in Israel normally. So that was the first thing Ruth renounced in staying with Naomi. She renounced marriage. The second thing she renounced was having children. You know, when Ruth renounced marriage, she de facto renounced children, which was also a very great sacrifice for a well-formed woman who was once married. You know, in those days, much more than now, much more than in our days, when a girl accepted to marry a man, it was first to have children. And it wasn't an acceptable thing to bear children out of wedlock. So therefore, Ruth knew that by staying with Naomi, she was definitely saying goodbye to motherhood, because she would not get married, so she would not bear any child. This was the second great sacrifice of renouncement that Ruth made. And the third sacrifice of renouncement that Ruth made was the renouncement of her motherland and her nationality. You see, Ruth decided to go with Naomi to the land of Israel. This means that she decided to leave the land of her forefathers to go to a foreign land and settle there. She knew very well that by staying with her mother-in-law Naomi, she will never go back to Moab anymore. This she knew. And at the same time, she didn't expect to be accepted by the Israelites as one of them. She knew it very well. She clearly knew that she was not one of them. She was not an Israelite. Even though she married an Israelite man, she was not an Israelite. She was still a Moabitess. So despite all these considerations, Ruth renounced her motherland. Ruth renounced her nationality. This was a great sacrifice too. And fourthly, Ruth also renounced her personal comfort. Not only her personal comfort, but also her position in society. Ruth was a married woman, or at least she had been a married woman. She had been a comfortable housewife. So she was undoubtedly highly respected in society, because married women were highly respected. So if Ruth had remained in her own country of Moab, she would certainly continue enjoying almost that same level of respect in her widowhood, because everybody would know that she had been married, now she's a widow, so she's a respectable woman. By deciding to go to the land of Israel with Naomi, she knew that she would in fact just become Naomi's maid servant. That was it. So from the position of a highly respected housewife, she would become just a maid servant. The lowest position possible, or one of the lowest positions possible in society. So a maid servant was a much less comfortable position for Ruth. So Ruth renounced both her comfort and her position. But Ruth also renounced her beliefs. You see, when Naomi told Ruth, look, Orpah has returned to her gods. You too return after her. Return to your gods. Return to your beliefs. Ruth said, no, your God, the God of Naomi, your God, the God of Israel, shall be my God. So Ruth was willing to renounce her beliefs, the beliefs of her family, the beliefs of her ancestors, to adopt the beliefs of her mother-in-law, to adopt foreign beliefs. So she was renouncing her beliefs, which is not a little matter. It was a great thing, I'm telling you, to renounce one's beliefs, especially in those days when people were highly attached to their gods, to their beliefs, to their religions. Ruth renounced her beliefs. Finally, Ruth renounced her family too, because she had the opportunity to go back to her mother's house, as Naomi taught her. Naomi taught her to return to her mother's house, to return to her family, to return to the house of her childhood, of her youth. But Ruth refused. Ruth refused to go back to her family. She preferred to stay with Naomi. Even though Naomi taught her that she couldn't expect creating, that Ruth couldn't expect creating any family in Israel, since Naomi didn't have any other son who could marry her. Ruth refused to go back to her family. So Ruth renounced her own family to stay with Naomi, to create a different family with Naomi. Let's now summarize in a nutshell what Ruth has. We had some technical issue. I think we're going to go back to it later. Maybe on Wednesday we'll come back to the last part. But today we're going to stop here. We'll come back to this same topic on Wednesday, the 22nd of September, and see exactly how this sacrifice of renouncement, this sixfold sacrifice of renouncement, took or brought elevation in the life of Ruth. God bless you abundantly beyond all your expectations, and have a wonderful week.